Hi you guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about something that is so sensitive to me and near and dear to my heart, and that is the topic of keloids. As many of you know, I have had keloids for almost my whole life. Ever since I got my ears pierced as a kid, I've had keloids. So I've been dealing with them for quite some time, and I have done pretty much everything you can possibly do for my keloids to try and tackle them. Up until now, nothing really has worked, and now I've gotten to the point where instead of trying to fight against them, I'm just accepting them, and anything I do going forward is not going to be with the intention of treating them, but just making me more comfortable with them. When I was growing up, I felt like the odd one out because I had them. I went through a lot of bullying and judgment because of it, and I don't want anyone else to feel that way. And I think now is a great time for me to speak on this topic that I know so well, and something that I feel like is needed for everyone else out there who feels like the odd one out because of these keloids, because of these things that are so hard to treat, because it's just the innate way in which our body heals. The reason why I am choosing to talk about this topic is because not only is it so near and dear to my heart, but I've also been through so much with my keloids that I'm a soldier about it now. But there are a lot of people who have varying levels of keloiding on their bodies and have not been able to conceal it as well as I have not been able to cope with it as well as I have, simply because my situation is not as visible and not as prominent and not as limiting and honestly debilitating as some keloids can be. And so I really want to talk about this and make it something that is a norm, something that we can openly discuss so that none of us feel like the odd man out. It's not a very, it's common, but you don't hear it spoken about commonly. And I think if we can normalize it, then we can help each other get through it. So for any of you out there who have ever felt insecure or sensitive about the keloid, if you've suffered through the pain of the keloid that is so hard to explain to anyone and so unpredictable, if you have ever felt hope and lost hope as far as what is going to come of your existing keloids, if you're ever going to keloid again, this is for you. This is for us. And so in this video specifically, I really want to go ahead and talk about when I got my keloids, what kind of keloids I have, and how they have impacted me. So I really hope that this makes a difference to somebody. So first, let's cover what a keloid is in the first place. A keloid is a benign dermal tumor where the scar forms outside the boundaries of the original injury or insult. So in a normal healing process, your scar will be faint and it'll develop just along the edges of where that actual injury took place. But with keloids, what happens is the scar tissue overproduces. There's far more collagen, there's far more growth factor, and that results in this really raised and broadened and dark and pigmented scar. And it can really happen anywhere. It can be spontaneous, it can happen after acne, it can happen after an incision, it can happen after ear piercings. Personally, I have quite a few keloids. So I have a very large one on my right shoulder. I have another one behind my right shoulder. I have another one behind my left shoulder. I have one behind each ear. And I used to have 4 more on my abdomen. So the first 2 that I developed were the ones behind my ears, and they developed after I got my ears pierced. And those are fine now. I wear clip-on earrings because I cannot have piercings. I'll develop a keloid again, and this time it might not be so small. But the ones that are healed are the ones that are on my abdomen, and the one behind my left shoulder, but the ones that are still there are the largest one that I've ever had, which is on top of my right shoulder, and another one behind my right shoulder. In the early 90s, before the varicella vaccine or the chickenpox vaccine became a regular part of your immunization schedule, we all got chickenpox. And if you don't know what chickenpox are, they're essentially really itchy little boils almost that erupt all over the body, and everyone went through it. They would pop up. They were usually from someone else. They were pretty contagious, and they would pop up everywhere, like from your scalp all the way down to your toes, and they were really, really itchy. And within 7 to 12 days, after a lot of calamine lotion and a lot of resisting itch, they would heal. Now we don't get it anymore because we have it in our vaccine schedule, but at that point we did. And when I got it, I was in 3rd grade. I got it the summer after 3rd grade, and I itched like everybody else, but there were a few spots that I itched a little too hard, and those are where my keloids formed. So there were 4 on my abdomen and 1 on my shoulder. And when they formed, I'll insert a picture here, they are really subtle. So you're not really sure of what's happening, especially if you've never seen a keloid before. And that's exactly what happened to me. But in my case, I had already had keloids before, behind my ears. And so my mom recognized that this was happening on my body. But the ones that were prominent at this point were just the ones on my abdomen, not so much the one on my shoulder. So what we did was what we did for my ear keloids, which was we went to the doctor and we got some injections of a steroid called Keloid a few times into each of the keloids. And just like what had happened in my ears, my abdomen ones healed miraculously. But eventually, when the one on my shoulder started growing and I went back to get injections in that spot, that Keloid injection didn't work. So I don't remember this far back, but we stopped going, we stopped getting the injection, and we just called it a day. Then fast forward to the summer after senior year of high school, so I was 17, my mom took me to a renowned plastic surgeon in Mississauga, which is just outside Toronto. And it was with the aim of having something done for my keloid before I moved away to Ireland for medical school. So as we were told before, surgery was not an option because by this point, my keloid was really large. It had been growing throughout all of high school, and it didn't bother me that much, but it also did. I used to be on the swim team. I played a lot of sports, and I would always have to put bandages on top of my keloid. And initially it would be covered by just the width of one bandage. And then eventually I had to layer 2 next to each other because it got wider and wider and wider. And people I remember would not get into the pool at swim meets. And someone from my team came and told me that the other team was unwilling to participate because they thought I had leprosy, which literally has nothing to do with keloids, but we were kids and it hurt. And so my mom saw that, and I guess she wanted to help me. So fast forward through high school in senior year when we went to go get treated, it was decided that I would try Keloid injections again. I don't know what protocol was followed the first time around. It was with a different physician altogether. And I don't know if we were given precautions or the side effects or the speech about what could go wrong the first time around, because it certainly wasn't given to us the second time around. But essentially what happened was my doctor had to or chose to speed up my Keloid injection protocol or schedule in order to accommodate the fact that I was going to be moving to Ireland. So normally you would have the injections done once a month roughly, but in order to accommodate my schedule, they were sped up to once every 2 weeks. So you're having it done twice a month instead. And again, we were not told that there would be any complications or things to worry about by speeding up this process, so we went along with it. At this point, Ramadan actually happened, and I remember distinctly, I went to Montreal with my family, and we were staying in a hotel all together, and I was getting ready with my mom in a bathroom, and I remember her saying to me, "Mashal, you're gaining weight. Your face is so full." And I was like, "But I'm fasting. Like, I'm not eating all day, and then whatever I eat at breakfast and dinner, you make for me, and it's healthy." And so my mom was taken aback too, and she was like, "Maybe it's your shampoo, maybe you're having an allergic reaction, but it's definitely something that we have to get to the bottom of." And I remember throwing away everything I was using. I had just started wearing makeup, and I had any products I had just recently switched to, I threw out, thinking there was something going wrong with them. And then I don't know how I went down the rabbit hole of doing Google searches in 2008, but I did, and I came up with the search result of something called Cushing syndrome. So essentially, Cushing syndrome can be caused by endogenous or exogenous causes. Endogenous causes are things that occur within you, so pituitary tumor, adrenal tumor, something along those lines. But an exogenous cause is something like medication use or steroid overuse. And in my case, it was caused by the steroid overuse. But we didn't know this at this point. So again, going back, I did this Google search. I saw that Cushing syndrome was a thing, and I marched right on over to my plastic surgeon with my mom, and we sat down with him, and we were like, look at these changes. There are crazy things going on. What do you think it is? I looked this thing up, and there's something called Cushing syndrome. And at first, when we were saying, like, what is going on with me? Do you think it has anything to do with this therapy that I'm on? He was like, no. There's absolutely nothing that correlates between what I'm doing and what you're presenting with. And then when I brought up Cushing syndrome, then all of a sudden I remember his response was, "Oh yeah, Cushing syndrome is a complication that can occur, but it occurs in 1 in a million. I guess you're that one." And I don't know what I did after that, because again, we were not told how it would progress. We were not told the extent of it. We were not told how bad it could get, and it got bad. But he didn't say anything to us, even at that point. And I just thought, okay, well, at least, I've pinpointed exactly where it's coming from, and now I'm not getting these injections anymore. Forget it. I'd only done a couple of what I was supposed to have done. And I was like, let me just stop, and the symptoms will stop. And no one told us any different. So I moved to Ireland, and as I'm moving, and for anyone who comes from an Asian background or a very sheltered background in general, getting up and moving across the world at the age of 17 on your own is a big undertaking. I didn't even know who I was. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how I was going to cope. I had never even been to a sleepover. I had never been shopping on my own. I had never done anything on my own. I had always been under the protective wing of my parents. And all of a sudden, I'm throwing myself to the wolves in Ireland, in medical school. So it was just a big, drastic change on all fronts. And then I'm changing. And I'm seeing my body become so unrecognizable day by day by day. I had grown up an athlete. I was healthy overall. And now, on top of not knowing where I was going, what I was doing, how I was going to handle medical school and this big move and living on my own and everything that everyone goes through when they first go to university, times 10, because it's an international move. You can't go home every other day. It was a lot then to also not recognize yourself. And it was really scary, to be honest. I don't know how I got through it. I'm impressed that I did, actually. But I remember I actually stopped looking at mirrors for a long time because I could not recognize the person that was looking back at me. When you have an allergic reaction, your whole face gets swollen? That is exactly what happened to me. And it happened so quickly that I remember it being like an overnight change. One day I looked normal, one day I looked a little bit like I was holding water, and the next day I was full blown a different person altogether. And on top of that, besides how my face was changing, there were so many other things that were happening that were natural presentations of Cushing's. Clumps of my hair started falling out with each brush stroke. I had really healthy hair, and just chunks of it every single day fell out. I remember my carpet in my dorm was just riddled with hair, and there's nothing that I could do about it. I remember one day I was sitting on the floor and my roommates were brushing through my hair because I was honestly too weak to even reach up and do that for myself. And I remember us talking and laughing, and then all of a sudden they went quiet, and right in front of me was a mirror. So I looked up into the mirror and I saw them looking at each other, and I asked what was going on. And when I turned around, they were holding clumps of my hair in their hands, and the brush had even more in it. And it went on like that for a very, very long time until I had such little hair left on my head. And while that was happening, my body was growing hair where it had never had hair in my life. I don't have hair on my chest. I don't have hair on my back. I don't really have hair on my face. And all of a sudden, I'm growing hair there. I don't really have hair on my hands, on my knuckles, and I never had. And all of a sudden, I was growing thick, coarse hair there. It was horrible. I had never really removed hair because I didn't really have to, besides like my arms, my underarms, my legs, bikini, but not on the rest of my body. And I started having to nair my whole body every couple days. Like I would slather myself from the neck down, and I would have to do that. It was really hard. And then on top of that, I developed acne. I'd never had acne in my life. All of a sudden, I had really terrible cystic acne. I developed striae, and striae are essentially stretch marks on steroids. So stretch marks seem cute and dainty when you put them next to striae. It's literally like your skin stretching apart and becoming really thin, which is a known side effect of steroids, and that's exactly what was happening to me. But what ended up happening was striae form at areas where stretch marks don't usually form. So I got them on my biceps. I wasn't building biceps by any means. I wasn't gaining weight. Across my chest, across the middle of my back, behind my arms in the fold, on the fronts of my calves, on the backs of my calves. And then the worst were probably on my abdomen. I didn't get them on the front of my stomach. I got it on the side, and they looked like tiger claws. And they were so dark purple. It was everywhere. They took over my entire body. Steroid overdose also affects your period. So I had my period for 6 months straight, every single day. And eventually, I had to go on birth control because I had to make it stop somehow. I also was so immunocompromised that I got sick with just about everything that you can imagine. I was quarantined for a while. I was always sick. My bones hurt. I just felt so ill all the time. There was a point where, I'm sorry, this is TMI, so cover your ears if you don't want to know, but I had my period already. On top of that, I got a UTI out of nowhere, and I got a yeast infection out of nowhere, all at the same time. And so it was so bad that I had to have a doctor come to my apartment, see me there, and I had to have my friends go and pick up my meds for me. They came and they held my hand and waddled me to the bathroom. They held my hand as I somehow sat down, and I somehow managed to use the bathroom, and I was bawling the whole time. So there was a lot going on, and I never slept. And part of it was because you get insomnia, and part of it was definitely some depression. And the depression was because look at what was happening. Also because I was homesick, and also because I was a star student, and all of a sudden I was flopping medical school. And I was not only letting myself down because I had never done poorly in school in my life, but I was letting my parents down. And so my parents, it was such a big undertaking for them to allow me to take this journey, to be in Ireland, to put their faith in me. And then all of a sudden I was letting them down academically. I was trying to make them proud. I was trying to be strong for them. I knew that they missed me. I knew that it was expensive for them to put me in medical school in Ireland. And I was just trying to do the best that I could do, and I could do no better. So it was really, really rough. I also am not one to call home and complain. I come from the kind of parenting where they will carry your worry and your pain with them every hour of the day. But to you, they'll say, man up, it's not a big deal. And so at that point, I was not prepared for either of those scenarios. I didn't want them to hurt, and I also didn't want to hear man up. So I didn't tell them. And I didn't have that strong of a support system I felt in Ireland. A lot of it was probably in my head, but I was being told constantly things like, oh, you look so different now to your profile picture on Facebook or whatever. And I know now at 29, that sounds like a whatever thing, but at the time, the reason why they were saying that was because they were saying, you know, what's Cushing's? She doesn't have Cushing's, she just got fat. And at the time that really hurt, because it wasn't just this weight that I looked like I was gaining in my face. It wasn't just the scars on the outside of my body. It wasn't just the hair that was falling off of my head and growing on my body elsewhere. It was all this internal sickness that no one saw and no one could understand. So not everyone gets Cushing's from keloids. In fact, nobody gets Cushing's from keloids, most likely. But this is the entirety of my story. And why this is a really big deal for me, because that is just a small snippet of what happened in my life because of these pesky little scars. And that, by the way, the Cushing's period lasted for 3 years because there's no treatment. All you can do is stop the offending agent, which I did, and then wait for the steroids to drain out of your body. And that took me 3 years. And even though that is gone, the scars stay with me permanently, not just physical scars, which I still have, all of them. In my striae grew new keloids, which is where the ones on the backs of my shoulders came from. There were also striae that formed around the larger keloid that I was getting the initial injections in, and the keloid grew into those striae. But I have mental and emotional scars from the entire process. And I, since then, have been through just about every possible treatment that could work for my keloids, and nothing has worked. And this means injections, topicals, pressure, laser therapy, chemotherapy, surgery, radiation. I have tried it all, and not a single thing worked. Actually, surgery and radiation worked on one of my keloids. The one behind my right shoulder was also surgically removed, and I had radiation afterwards, but it grew back. And the one that is on top of my shoulder, because it is so large and because it's on such a sensitive area, number one, because it's on a sensitive area, there's nerves running right underneath. It's also right on my shoulder joint. I can't have it surgically removed, and something of that size would require a graft, which really would just leave me with 2 keloids because it's just how my body heals. I would probably redevelop the keloid here, and I would develop one wherever the skin was taken from my body. I'm in pain every single day. Keloids are associated with intense itch and neuropathic pain. And the theories essentially are that when it's itching, it's growing. And the neuropathic pain comes from the scar actually contracting down and entrapping nerves, causing that pain. And it is terrible pain. It's something I can't describe. If I try to, it's like multiple needles jabbing into you, all concentrated in one location over and over and over again. And that happens for the span of about 5 to 10 minutes, and then it stops. And then you're fine for a couple hours, and then it happens again. So there has been nothing that has worked for the pain, and that is probably the worst part of it. I don't know that I'm going to be able to find something that helps with that, but this next journey that I'm going on is really exciting for me, and I'm really hoping that it brings about some kind of improvement for me. And in filming it, I hope that I can open up some doors for you guys, because I had never heard of this as a possibility. And because I have now, I want to share it with you. And if you, like me, have tried everything else and your keloids are resistant to treatment, maybe this is your next option too. Many people's keloids are really large and exposed to the world, and I can't even fathom how that must affect their lives. And the scariest part is how unpredictable the whole thing is. You never know when your keloid's going to grow. You never know when it's going to stop growing. You never know when you're going to form a new one. And you're always riddled with these thoughts of, what if I need emergency surgery? What if this minor cut turns into a keloid? What if this piercing on my nose turns into a keloid? For me, my biggest worry, honestly, is what if I have to have a C-section? Then what? There are definitely things that you can do now if you know that your body has a tendency to form keloids. And so we're going to talk about all of this, but that's the point of my doing this series, is just to start the open dialogue. I want everyone with keloids to know that they're not alone, and I want you to be aware of as many treatment modalities as are available to you. But most of all, because it can be so isolating, I want to give solace to the fact that there is someone out there who understands maybe a fraction of what you're going through. A year ago, I posted a picture on Instagram, and I had to take it down shortly after. The reason why I had to take it down was because my mom actually heard from somebody that they had looked me up online, and in doing so, they felt that while my representation of myself was great overall on social media, my sharing my very brave to post picture of my keloid on Instagram wasn't good, and it was a stain on my character. The word that was used was dag, which in Urdu translates to stain. For someone to pass that judgment on something that God has given me, something that I've struggled with, something that they have no idea about, something that took a lot of courage to share, it was really disappointing. But I took the picture down because I didn't want my mom and my dad to have to deal with that kind of commentary. But I put it back up. I could not believe that someone was wanting to make me feel ashamed of something I do not have to be ashamed about. And I want to reiterate for myself and for anyone else who has ever felt like they have to put bandages over their keloids, cover them up when they're going out, not expose them to the world, not have to explain what they are. I want to do this for all of you and remind us that these are nothing to be ashamed of. They are our war wounds. Every single human being on this planet has something that they think twice about, that they're sensitive about, or have been at some point in their lives. Maybe it's some concern you have with your anatomy, the shape of your nose, your teeth, the hair on your body, your hairline, your hair color, your acne, a scar that you have, vitiligo, an amputation. Everybody has something. But each of those things are so unique to us and tell a story about who we are and how God created us and the life that we've been destined to live, that to have to hide that from the world just for fear of judgment or embarrassment or not to make someone else feel uncomfortable, all the while inconveniencing ourselves, is not something that I'm going to support anymore. I did that to myself for a very long time, but enough is enough. I am owning my story, my journey, who I am from top to bottom. And when you're ready, I hope that you own you and yours too. So that's just a little background on my keloid journey, how it affected me, when they started, what happened down the line. And the reason why I'm starting with this is because I want to preface what comes next with how important this topic is to me. And I know no better way to do that than to let you in on something that is so near and dear to my heart, something that I have struggled to share, and something that will make you feel comfortable knowing that I might understand just a little bit of what you're going through. And it'll help you understand me better also. In the future, I plan on talking about what keloids are in depth and the treatment modalities that exist. Everything from topicals to invasive procedures and things that are available all around the world, as well as the top practitioners in this field. And of course, I am going to take you along with me on my journey of what I'm doing next. Until next time, I will talk to you soon. Bye.